it's tight. It's shit. That would have been a good start, right? Like popping off, like music coming out, yeah, exciting. It's funny, in theatre, we feel like we need good starts, right? Like start strong, continue as you mean to go on and all that, but ultimately we're in a room, right? A room with other people who maybe we don't know. But we want the same thing, yeah? Something good. But we are fibres, sinews, bloods. We are breathing automatically at the same time. Well, maybe not anymore now I've mentioned it. Remember to breathe. It will be useful. Because there is a beast. Breathing heavily through its chest, its lungs. A voice unlike any other. In cobbled streets, its scales heave. In lamplit corners, its tongue prepares. In tower block windows, its nostrils flare. We know this beast. We fear this beast. We love this beast. I'm Georgie. I'm a writer, very poetic. I'm also an actor, depending on what day you ask me. And here at my fingertip are over 1,000 constellations. Pretty mad, eh? Here at my fingertip are universes of memories. This is my mouth. It's weird, isn't it? In the cracks of my lips are worlds, planetary systems. There is life. This is my face, my head. I'm not as scary as I might look, I promise. I hope I ain't coming across as scary. I never hurt anyone, stabbed anyone, I never kicked anyone's head in. Now you might see me coming towards you and you might think a multitude of things. You might think, he's a racist. You might think, I wonder if he's in the EDL. You might be like, did that guy protect statues? Because you laughed at that too much. Right? Because you see, there are so many ways to say the same thing, right? Like, you got, I love you, text me when you're home. I miss you, what are you up to? Fuck you, kind regards. Chav, council house and vibe. There are so many ways to say the same thing. And it's like with this story, right? I've been trying to work out how to tell it for so long, okay? I've been going through so much kind of stuff. And I'm not a good writer. I don't believe in my ideas enough, okay? So I'm hoping that this new idea that I've got will help that somewhat, okay? I've decided, in as non-academic way as possible, that theatre is all about choice. Big, you know, big. We choose to come, we choose to support a friend or a family member, we choose to spend money in a cost of living crisis on these precious minutes. And you will hope that I will give you something to make it the best £5 you ever spent. Now you have a choice to leave whenever you like. You have a choice to heckle me if you want. And in this play, you decide how things pan out. You have that choice, all just by using your voice. I will bring up two options throughout tonight's performance, and you will tell me which one you want by shouting it out simultaneously. Yeah, boy. So, we'll give it a go, all right? Like with this situation. So, who was the better Prime Minister? Tricky one, isn't it? Can't give me some. All right, let's try this instead. I'll bring up one, you give me a cheer if you think that. I'll bring up another, you give me a cheer if you think about that, okay? Who was the better Prime Minister? Yeah. Who was the better Prime Minister? Yeah, it's not really the right answer. And now look, it is a gamble with all this, okay? I'm a 50-50 writer. Half my stuff's alright, half of it's shy, okay? I need to preface that, just in case you expect everything to be like dramatically sound, whatever that means nowadays anyway. I'm also not a good actor. I don't know if you can tell. I forgot my lines a little bit ago. And I'd just like to provide a bit more, interactivity to the evening, So any time that anything comes up on this screen, I'd like you to read it out, okay, in unison, right? Should we give it a go? Yes, we'd love to. All right, cool. We can use the PowerPoint. This is it. All right, give these a go.
We are an audience. We have a voice. This is so much fun.
Yes, it is. Yeah. All right, it was good, but let's try and not make it sound like a school assembly. Okay? Let's try some funny little voices, right? So try this one as a kid.
We're all grown up.
That's annoying. proper posh, like Downton Abbey or some shit?
We have families, houses.
Good. All right, now try this one like proper common, like chavvy almost, like all that kind of stuff.
I'm stupid without the theatre.
Yeah, nice. That feels good, right? Feels good, yeah? Okay, so anytime anything comes up, I'd like you to just read it. I won't make you look stupid. I won't, I promise. Everyone happy?
Yes.
Good. Then let's begin. Somewhere there is a kid called George. Somewhere George is born. Now George will be a very special boy. Our play begins with George. Here is that story. George's story, however you want it. Now, would you like the real opening or the fake one?
Yeah! 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 Yeah!
Really? Yeah, it's going to be hard to decide. When George was born, he came out blue. The doctors thought it was a medical marvel, a blue baby, like Avatar before its time. And they took pictures with him. Doctor after doctor piled in. They were ready to nab their commission from the local papers. Never before seen the roll-up freak show with the headline act,
The Blue Baby!
It turned out George was just freezing cold, dying. George had to be put into an incubator, and every winter to this day, his fingers, his toes turned pale white. But he prevailed, as he is a very special boy, our George. George's dad ran out into the street, punching into the air and screaming,
He's a very special boy! He's an utter miracle! He can live!
Yeah, nice. George begins with a happy life. His school's rough, but in the best way. Fights are an everyday occurrence, which George learns quick. They weren't like fights, more like dances, like a rite of passage. And because he was born a cold boy, the playground's air freezes up his mouth for the rest of the day. And he got picked on for that big time. His dad used to say,
Quiet kids are weird kids.
George's dad loves Lee Nelson, right? And borrows a telly from his mate to watch him all the time. And so George becomes king of the castle with his Lee Nelson impression. It's too good to demonstrate now. This wins over any young bully, thug, or violent teen in the area. George is like a court jester, keeping everyone smiling. There are no dragons here. There are no dragons. But nothing good lasts forever, does it? And remember, I'm not that good of a writer, okay? So we have to have something bad happen for good drama, am I right? Yeah, we need something bad. So, here we go. Would you like to see George's parents die in a tragic stampede, kind of like the Lion King, but not the Lion King? It's not the fucking Lion King. Right? Or would you like to see him get in trouble at school? What do you think to cheer for? I didn't really think about that. It all started when George's best mate, Johnny Kleins, convinced George it would be a good idea to go to the gorge. The gorge was near their estate, a nowhere place, but one of those places which at night became a dangerous place. George normally avoided it, but Johnny Kleins convinced him it would be fun. His older brother was going with a group of friends from the local secondary. It's fine when they first get there, it's just a lot of standing around, but then George notices a few kids he knows to be part of a local gang. They call themselves the Wildebeests. Out of nowhere, they advance towards George and Johnny Kleins, and Johnny Kleins' brother and his friends, they're shouting and running, and it's all messy, and George doesn't know what's going on. He crouches down, trying to make himself small, when suddenly he hears a shouting, George! George! He looks up to see the familiar faces of his parents. They must have heard trouble and come looking. He shouts to them, run towards them, and the local papers coined the event as Feed Them to the Lions. Teen stampede kills couple, leaving young cub orphaned. It was the only death by stampede in the local area's history. And George began a new life with his granddad, away from all he knew. George is 9. He's just found out his parents are gone, and he's just got off the train in this new place where granddad lives. It's kind of nice, but like kind of nothing, They're walking through this underpass. There's this painting slapped on the wall. It's not graffiti or nothing, like it's not random, it's dedicated. There's a little kid with an ice cream, 99, there smiling. Grandad's carried on walking. He doesn't think underpasses are safe. George ain't sure what Grandad's afraid of. The ice cream is falling off the cone, and like this painting is a film, it's moving. George can see it falling, and it's beautiful, and it's rich, and it's full of flavours. George can taste the flavours of the ice cream, and he's almost crying out for him to stop and look, because his ice cream is melting, it's going to hit the floor, and George realises that's a stupid thought because it's a painting, and he realises he wasn't born 9 years ago, he was born now, and they'd always tell him that his brain worked too fast for his body, and that he couldn't understand shit, and George sees these words.
Don't let the fuckers melt you down.
Don't let the fuckers melt you down. George is with his granddad in the park. The new home isn't quite what the old one used to be. Boys like him are a bit more tucked away. There's definitely none at his new school. He isn't settling in very well. George isn't allowed full fat Coke because it makes him too hyperactive, right? So as a treat, his granddad gives him 2 cans of full fat Coke. Fucking sick, right? Brimming with sugar, George is buzzing around the park. And once he's in a tears, his granddad sits him down for story time. Now, granddad is a great storyteller, okay? So I want you to have that in your mind as you read this next part, like doing justice, yeah? And you over there, sorry, I directed that.
There is a creature, a violent, monstrous thing. It will soon emerge if you do not listen.
Even though his granddad is a super engaging storyteller, George has noticed something a bit more interesting. There's a group of local lads across the green doing something quite funky.
It has a taste for humans, mainly called George. If you defy it, you will be torched.
They're spraying words onto the benches, like proper artistic, like they've got colours with different cans, and it's not dedicated.
Look at me. You need to blend in to avoid the cause. Are you listening?
Grandad grew up poor, homeless at times, really fucked over by the state kind of guy. Life gave him nothing, and he fought for everything he could get. And now he buries that all away, acts as though it never happened, that he has some form of privilege. George ain't getting the story. He's like, I ain't getting it.
You're not getting it.
You what?
Pardon?
What do you want from me?
Elocution, boy.
Election?
Elocution.
Election?
Elocution.
Electrician! And Grandad grabs him by the scruff of the neck, pulling him in tight. Violent, you could say. He's like, butter, not butter. Water, not water. And so on. Now George feels this red hot flush under his skin, like he'd been doing something wrong his whole 9-year life. Like the stars didn't teach him right. Like he didn't know his own voice. So, George must decide. Will he follow his granddad's wishes and change his voice? Or will he defy his granddad and go down his own path? Yes! Too right. George's granddad grows silent, takes a Benson and Hedges out of his pocket and lights it up, inhales and slowly puffs out, the smoke rising from his nostrils, his eyes grow narrow, his knuckles hard. Granddad gestures for George's arm. He continues making love to his cigarette, blowing the remains into George's eyes. Holding on to George's wrist, tight, his nails digging in slightly, he reaches the end of his cancer stick with ash dripping. He plucks it from his mouth and begins a slow descent onto George's skin with the heat growing closer and closer. Do you want George to continue on this path of defiance? Or do you want him to comply with his granddad's wishes?
Yes!
Okay. Grandad grips George's wrist even tighter. His eyes daggering their way into George's as a drop of ash pierces George's skin and the cigarette continues its descent. He twists George's arm as George tries to pull away before looking in his tear-filled eyes and asking him again. Do you want harm to come to George? Or do you want to save George's life? so George continues his life. With a new voice he's been trained. And so it was decided George would slay the dragon. Peace would be restored across the land. George is at his new school. There's a load of posh boys and they're annoying as shit. Alright? Every day there's a new name to call him, there's a new way to pull him apart. But George stays headstrong, but he grows quieter and quieter. His school is putting on a production of, yeah, you guessed it, St. George and the Dragon. Not just because it's thematically good for me, but also because they want to teach children the importance of being brave. Even posh boys need to be brave sometimes. George isn't really into the whole acting thing, but then Miss Jenkins casts him as George. That's the main part. Yeah, that's about right, you know what I mean? Maybe because he's called George, or maybe because he might make friends this way, or it'll grow his confidence. Or maybe because George's voice, when he first joined the school, made him seem violent. Only problem is, now after his conversation with Grandad in the park, George has been trying to blend in more, shake things up. Miss Jenkins is confused.
If you try it a bit rougher, he's a tough guy.
So G has a choice. Does he become the George that Grandad wants him to be? Or be the George that Miss Jenkins wants him to be?
Yeah.
George decides to go on with his very good direction from Miss Jenkins and begins his journey towards actor fame, fortune and glory. He takes direction very well and is currently unrepresented. Getting back to a shade of how things used to be feels good for George, and to carry on in this vein, he decides to bring back his coveted Lee Nelson impression in the playground. This will get him, he thinks. This will get me in. So G is stood in the playground at break time, giving the performance of a lifetime, when this annoying fuck called Harquin and his shitty little mates come over, yeah? And they're breaking their way through this crowd that's erupted. Now, Harquin's the kind of kid that befriends you in the early years of your school life, builds a strong bond of trust between you both, then in second period science, gets a rubber from Ryman's out from his Batman pencil case, covered in blue and black biro spots, and dares you to eat it, because it'll be funny. So you do, because, you know, it'll be funny. Before he gets everyone in the class's attention howling, look! Look, George is eating a rubber! Isn't that fucking weird? And the rest of the class, even Jamie fucking Hagel, whose name rhymes with bagel, they're all just like laughing, cracking up, pointing at you, and you get forever known as the rubber boy, amongst other derogatory terms in the vein of chat. You know that kind of kid? Now, Harquin's out here today, a few years on from Rubbergate, and with his posh little bratty voice, like...
So this chatty guy doing this on TV, why are you copying him? Do your family talk like that too? They all think they do. I bet you all live on the streets. I bet you never had a home.
And he goes on and on and on, and it's fucking infuriating. Everyone started laughing along with Harquin. And George is getting that sensation again, burning through his veins as though he's staring into the face of a dragon whose breath is piercingly hot and it won't let him go, but won't eat him either. And then out the corner of his eye, he spots the watchful glare of Miss Jenkins, observing his every move. In his head, he pictures his lovely dead parents' faces as they were trampled monstrously. And so, George takes a second to evaluate his options as though a room full of audience members are mapping out his life for him. Does he smack Harquin one?
Yes!
Or does he ignore Harquin? George launches at him, yeah? He punches him and he pushes him on the floor. Harquin smacks his head at the concrete and George is on top of him, punching, smacking, clawing, scratching, whatever he can do to shut Harquin up. All the while Harquin's like laughing and tells him to keep going, keep going, keep going. So George does, keeps going, punching, smacking, clawing, smashing, punching, till Harquin ain't laughing anymore. Make it hurt, little man. Yeah, make it hurt. That was intense. But I just want to let you know we're at a halfway point. Congratulations. And I'll be honest, I haven't lied. I've just maybe like hidden something a little bit back, you know, dramatic and all that. This story that we're telling, however it pans out, whatever version we decide to go for, is actually the story of how George dies. And it might get a bit harder from here on out. But there are so many ways to die, and not all of them need to be sad. There are so many ways to say the same thing. But I just want to know, knowing that moving forward, are you happy to continue? Yeah, there's no option for this one, sorry. Yeah, all happy? Yeah. Okay. And let's carry on. The story goes like this. When you're born, the world dictates your destiny, and if at any second or moment you waver from your path, the dragon awakens, violently, opens your jaw, snakes its way past the tongue, the throat with its jagged, blackened nails, and rips your voice away, clean from the body, gobbles it up for itself, leaving you with nothing. We sacrifice each other to save ourselves daily.
We know this is. We fear this is. We love this is.
George has beaten Harquin to a pulp. He's been suspended from school with the threat of exclusion on the horizon. He's lost his part in the school play, which would have been incredible, and seen George begin his journey to an exceptional life, but he's got 2 weeks off school. You know what I mean? He can do whatever the fuck he wants. Grandad has picked George up from school, and the pair are walking to the bus stop to go home. Grandad is silent. He skulks with a cigarette in his mouth. George tries to speak. He deserved what he got. Nothing. If anything, he needed more. Nothing. I won't let people define me. Still, nothing. As Grandad continues on his path, devoid of noise, George feels a guilt singe his blood cells. It's like he's under a microscope. Look at me! Listen! Grandad stops, but he doesn't look back. The world feels like it's been picked up by its ankles, got shaken by this situation, and has nothing left in its pockets. In the distance, high above, wings can be heard flapping, very subtly. Face me! Speak to me! I won't let you be silent! George's Grandad flicks his cigarette away. And he continues walking. George does all he can to keep up with him as he hears the breath in the air all around him. On the bus, the windows begin to frost up, condensation. There's a baby laughing as its parents sit and sip coffees. George closes his eyes and reminds himself of a past life where there were no dragons here, there are no dragons here. When he reopens them, he takes his Grandad in again, who stares out of the window with nothing left to say. And George is fucking riled up, man. He feels a hot sensation burn inside of him, wanting his Grandad to say something, anything, berate him, punish him, hit him, burn him, fucking do anything. And he explodes on the bus and lets out this howl. Nobody says shit about me or my family. I won't let them. But the bus slams to a halt, with a crunch on the roof as metal shreds itself from its bones and that once laughing baby screams. From nowhere, this dragon emerges, slowly, upwards of 10 feet. Their back arches against the sky's edge as their skin begins to pop seemingly from the windows, all scaly green. Their claws scrape against the seats as they lick their lips and breathe a heavy, hot breath. They are here. George catapults from the vehicle, rushes his way home as fast as his feet can carry him, bolting himself through the front door, into his room and barricading himself in with bed, bin, clothes, books, anything he can nab. And on his wall with a biro, he scratches something into the back of the door to embed himself in history. If this is to be his final moment, this will be his eternity. George was here. The hunt has begun. This was the first in a few moments which would go on to make George a very different person. So, what kind of future do we want to see for George? Do we want to see one that's pushing or pulling?
Yes!
We'll go for this one. As a toddler, George used to bang his head against the floor. They still don't know why. For hours he'd bang his head against the floor, maybe in the hope someone would hear him. When George was born, he came out blue. The doctors called it a miracle. In year 8, George stops answering the register in class because they always laugh when he does. As he grows older, George comes to realise Lee Nelson is actually a character played by middle-class comedian Simon Brodkin for jokes. Later, George comes home to find his granddad making a bonfire with his hoodies. In year 11, his granddad changes tack from calling George by his name and instead shifts to other terms like
lazy, useless, the problem.
Throughout his life, George turns quieter and quieter, running as fast as he can to keep up with any crumb of voice left until he forgets what he sounds like entirely. The dragon stops chasing him, disappears from plain sight. And George is now a fearful boy, afraid to even speak to his grandfather, who sits in his armchair, smoke plumes festering in the air.
What a fucking waste of my time.
You don't know who you are. You don't know what you sound like. You've been losing your voice since you were young and now it's gone completely. You don't speak to anyone, but everyone assumes all they need to about you and assume more because you don't talk. Weird, isn't it? Everyone knows you even if they don't. George is 17. He's walking to the station. He isn't sure where he's going. He's in an underpass. It's kind of familiar. He can almost see a smaller version of himself walking alone with his granddad up ahead, not stopping. Don't let the fuckers melt you down. Almost on autopilot, George stops dead, turns 90 degrees and sees a mural plastered on the wall. No ice cream this time, nor a boy holding it. Long gone, evaporated into history now. Now something else is there. A whale. This huge fucker on its own, lonely in the middle of the sea. Dark and blues, nothing else for miles. Below it, on the ground, the spray can still sits. Fresh from the creative flurry which happened here. George slowly stoops and picks it up, feels the weight of it in his hand, and sprays with only one idea in his head.
Don't let the fuckers drown you out.
Don't let the fuckers drown you out. So George continues developing his voice. He buys paints, cans and stencils. He becomes a poet of the walls. Trick that dragon, amplify your choice. Don't be silent, fill that void with voice. Succeed if the stars say no, defy their expectation. Don't let it fuck, pillage or define you. Be the outlier of your generation.
We know this beast.
We hate this beast.
We love this beast.
We kill this beast. Fuck the dragon.
Fuck the dragon.
Fuck that fucking dragon.
Fuck you too.
Each step of the way he feels this hot breath on his back, a watching eye silhouette in every move, but continues planting his words in a temporary history book, with Grandad shaking his head at every corner. George was here. Now people start taking pictures, sharing on their stories. George's work becomes a local phenomenon. Some of them are all like, it's so
urban, unique, vibrant, colourful, lively.
And then you've got others being all like, well, I think it's so
tacky, disgusting, trash, horrible, poisonous.
George wraps up his work. He misses school, falls out with his friends, distances himself from Grandad, sneaks home late instead of going home early. All the while, the tail is snaking its way through the alleyways, the underpasses. The shadow lurks, creeping across the walls. The nostrils sniff at something which shouldn't be happening. But George pollutes every inch of every surface he can find. He scrubs and sprays and sinks and sands and shakes and sends his messages to as many as he can reach and blots his granddad's fucked up lessons into history. Because this is his voice now, and ain't nobody ripping it from him. Now, the police are about to catch George in the act. Alright? I'll be honest with you. So, how does he try and diffuse the situation? Does he do it through some bars? Poetry? Does he do it through parkour? Yeah. Tricky one, isn't it? Everything's going great for George. Till the evening he's cornered by the police, who give chase, their feet slapping the pavement, their keys and batons dragging along the floor, shouting after, blowing whistles, seeing a bald head bobbing up and down in front of them, dripping with salt and lactic acid, and they think they have him. George thinks he's caught. They've got him cornered by the back of the co-op with walls on every side. They're approaching, encroaching. George thinks he's caught. They ain't leaving till the job is done. When George, the cheeky one, chucks a spray can and he smoke screens the area, darts under one, two of their legs, jumps over the other's head. I've lost my place. They're left in the dirt. Never catching him now and don't ever catch him. They won't ever catch us because George is a special boy and we won't slow down for anyone. And George makes it home and the crowd go fucking safari! He's slams the door behind him, panting, his skin clammy with adrenaline, and he laughs a small, voiceless laugh. He was winning. Finally, in his life, he was winning. When he looks up and sees it, the winged devil breathing heavily, welcome to the dragon's lair. No words are allowed from the voiceless, because that's the story, innit? And we all need the story to remain the same so that we can pass it on. There, towering in the gloom, it sits, licking its lips, and whispers,
"Why did you destroy this place?
This is my voice. This is my home," George says.
There is no home for you.
And because George is a very special boy, he proclaims, "I can do what no one else can."
What have you?
He looks to the inky dark walls of the lair, inscriptions, memories, stories he'd never known. Danny was here, Kwaku was here, Sophie was here, Jana was here, Georgie will be here, finally replying, "I can live." And then the dragon stands tall, fills its scaled body with breath, and releases this deep sigh over George preparing. George asks, "What do you want from me?" The beast does it again and again and again and again and again before the names on the walls melt into George's life.
I will give you no chance.
Now, backed into a corner, George has a final decision to make. Does he slay the dragon? Or does he run?
Yeah!
And the beast boils and bubbles blood from its skin, unleashing a tornado of heat, a firestorm of spells, of witchcraft, of toxicity.
Violent, mindless, aggressive, stupid, oink, murderer, scary, lazy. The problem, chav, 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 chav.
Finding the strength of the names of those who come before him, George snaps one of the claws off from the dragon, extended towards his face, and sticks it into the dragon's neck, extending and snicks it into the dragon's neck, dodging the claws, swiping at him, and pulls down as far as he can, through the throat, the stomach, into the intestines and out again. And in this face, he sees the eyes of Harquin, the people around him, of the police who wrongly accused him of his local community, of England, and he proves them wrong, because George is a special boy, right? And as the dragon falls, George rips and scrapes and pulls the chest of the dragon apart, forcing the lungs, the heart, blood, tissue, guts out from the creature, his fingernails forever dirty with the act. He tears the tongue out from the beast, and he's left with a silence. A silence unlike any he'd ever heard. As he looks down and sees the bloodied face of his grandfather squirming on the floor. George backs away, glances at a pair of bloodied hands before reaching one out to his grandfather on the floor, who grimaces. And from a frail, withered mouth, Grandad rasps, "What do you want from me?" This is the part where George dies. He bolts from the door, leaving it swinging in the wind. His body feels heavy, he feels every blood cell orbiting. His heart bellows in his ears, and he runs as far as he can. And in each face he passes, he sees the dragon, and in return they see that in him. A threat, someone to hurt them, chav, villain, thug. And so George becomes those things because we need him to. We need to fit him into a box and understand him. We kill him by taking away anything he could be. And now he sits in the pit of the mountain, looking out over his old home, and dies in the minds of everyone who knew it. I ain't a good writer. I don't know what all this is, to be honest with you. I thought that maybe by giving you the power, then we might find something interesting. I don't know, like an empowering story or something. I'm not sure I could ever give you that. I'm not sure you'd want that, really. I'm not sure they'd program it. I don't know, I ain't a good writer. Because you see, I think they want it to be tough, these stories. I think they want it to be full of violence or suppression or I don't know, someone else. They don't want to know that Grandad was actually a kind man, that George was full of ambition, shot for the moon, and he got whatever he wanted. You chose violence. You slayed the dragon. That's your story. Is it a good story? Worth the fight? Because you know, that kind of stuff, I don't know, like it gets me thinking, like, how much do I need to bleed to live in here with you and these four walls and lights and sound and all that? Because out there, I'm the problem. Yeah? Out there, I'm the one that should be slaughtered in the cave so that life can carry on as they like it. I've beaten up a local kid. My nan is a drug addict. My mum is a sex worker. My father is abusive. He's killed my mother. My older brothers get arrested. My little sisters get pregnant. My best friend is shanked. He sells drugs. We all live in council flats. I'm not getting to university. I'm stupid. I'm the problem. They take my hands. They take my tongues. They take my fingertips. They take my lips. They take my stories. They take my voice. But out there, that is not me. That's not me. But in here, I will obey whatever you want. I will dance to your tune just to make you happy. Do you want me to bow?
Yeah.
Okay. And a final choice for you, once the lights have gone out. You decide if you want to applaud. For whatever reason people do nowadays. That's your call.